And we're live. Welcome to yet another edition of PCS Impact Q&A. I'm your host, MJ Boyce, the Director of Community Outreach at PCS Grades. Boom! With me, as always, is the lovely Megan Harless, our resident PCS reform advocate, and oh, by the way, resident BA censored for little ears in your room because we love you. We've got a great show for you today. We're gonna be talking all things selling your home, pre-PCSing. We've got a lovely gentleman with us, Mr. Joel Lifshitz. And before we get to him, and before we get to Megan's DOD updates, I'm just gonna run through those housekeeping items like I do every week. Ready, set, here we go. Okay, we've got the answers. That's right, we've got the answers. And if we don't have those answers, we know who does. And if we don't know either of those things, we're gonna take your questions for action and get back to you with an answer. Speaking of questions, comments, concerns, shout outs, go ahead and leave those in the comment section below and we'll get back to you with, or we'll be putting your name in an entry to win on our wheel of names for some Hope Design Limited bling. Shout out, Lauren. Yes, so questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, shout outs, go ahead and leave those in the comment section. LOL smiley faces are encouraged, but do not count as an entry to win. Next, we bring the experts to you. Experts like U.S. Transportation Command, experts like real estate agents, experts like military spouse employment advocates and education experts. We bring them to you because they are the source. But sometimes you're going to have a question that is specific to you and your military family. And in those specific instances, your two forever and always resources will be, number one, your local chain of command. Number two, your local transportation office. Those are the people who know you. Those are the people who are dealing with your stuff. Those are the people who can take your issues and further them for action. Of course, you always have PCS Grades who has your back always as a resource. You can come and leave and read reviews from other military families like yours on your on-base housing, off-base housing, your movers, your lenders, and so much more. So head on over to PCS Grades after this, but not until we're done, because it's a great show today. And last, but certainly not least, and I say this every week, but I'm going to be modifying it every single week. Keep doing your part, people. We've almost got that curve flattened. We've almost got it flattened. Oh my goodness, you've done your part and we are so proud of you and we're working towards that. We just got a little bit further to go because when we flatten that curve completely, we are going to flatten Murphy with it. You hear us, Murphy? We're this close. We are coming for you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Megan for those DOD updates. Megan?
Hey everybody, so just a couple of things for you this week. The first one, as always, is that as soon as you get your hard orders, get on DPS and set up your move. We're seeing, as we do with every peak season, some locations have some capacity issues and have long lead times before movers can get booked. So as soon as you get your orders, get on DPS, get your move set up so that way you can try to get out of there when you need to. The second thing is that we heard a rumor earlier about there being concerns about Oconus shipments getting created due to the lumber cost increase and the labor shortage that is happening. And I was fortunate, I was actually on the call with Transcom when that question came up, when I saw that rumor. And so I was able to ask it. And the answer is that Oconus shipments will be crated. They have priority in the crating system to get crated so they can get across the ocean and get to wherever your Oconus location is, or to get back to the United States if you're coming back from your Oconus assignment. So nothing to worry about there in regards to crates and your Oconus shipments. So that's all I got for now. Sending it back to you, MJ. Are you muted?
It would not, I repeat, it would not be a Wednesday if I wasn't. Yeah. For real, people. Oh my gosh. Yes. And thank you so much for those DOD updates. And remember, you know, Megan goes down that policy rabbit hole so that we don't have to. She is one huge source for us and she can provide that rumor control. So thank you for that because we already got enough rumors running around our military community. We don't need those that aren't true. So good on you. Yes. Okay. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest, Joel Lifshitz. Would you mind telling our audience just a little bit about yourself, Joel?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a relatively recent transplant to Las Vegas. I lived a majority of my life in the Midwest and decided it was time for a change. My wife and I packed up the family, moved to Las Vegas about 10 years ago. She'd always wanted to pursue a career in real estate. So I said, it's your turn. You followed me for the last 20 years. I can, give some credence to your dreams. So we embarked upon a career in real estate, and I've been blessed to work closely with the military community. I've helped hundreds of military members, both past and present, with their real estate needs. And I am prior service myself, so I've got insight into the special needs and circumstances of military members when they're engaged in a move.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joel. Okay, I hear an echo. Do you guys hear an echo?
Do. I thought that was just me for a minute.
It can't just be me. Okay, no, we're good. We're good. We're so good. Okay. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone. Are we sure it's not Monday? No, it's a Wednesday because I was muted. Welcome very much so, Joel. We've got a lot of questions for you. And please, just for everybody at home, if you know of somebody who's going to be selling this house, because we're going to be talking about this crazy hot market and some of the challenges that, people like us face, go ahead and point them in this direction, tag them in here, and also tell us where you're tuning in from as well. Okay, so we're just going to dive right into those questions. You guys ready? Right. So, first one is for me. Joel?
Yes.
How soon in the PCS process should a military family be prepared to sell their home?
I would recommend that they reach out to a real estate professional 6 months before their move date, before their order date, just to get in tune with the local market, see if there's any repairs or updating that need to be done to sell a home in that market, get an estimate of value so that they can plan ahead. And most oftentimes, the real estate agent can put you in touch with somebody on the other end that can start on your home search there, because that's really half of the equation. And in some market conditions, the purchase is going to be the difficult part. And in some markets, the sale is going to be the hard part. So really finding where you need to put your energy to make the process go as smoothly as possible, and give yourself enough time so you're not really stressed out.
Uh-oh, did we lose him?
I can hear you.
Okay, there you are.
It froze for a second on my end.
It did on mine. Could you, I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that? So you did mention that, up to 6 months, starting
Yes.
at 6 months, but what about, because Murphy is all over us. What about those families who start get short fused orders? You guys are leaving in 2 to 3 months.
Well, and a lot of it depends on what your needs are. If you don't need to sell the house before you leave, a lot of the process can be done remotely now. I've sold homes to people that are deployed in the desert. I've had sold homes to clients that are overseas, and we do everything electronically and FaceTime. So the modern technology allows us to do things that we couldn't have done decades ago. So I think that we have the ability to do it. My focus is to reduce the stress on a family that's relocating, because there are a lot of facets that need to be considered. So it's easier to, in my opinion, have enough time because you started early is much preferable to scrambling because you didn't. But there certainly are, it's possible to do it when you do get last minute orders. But I tend to try to plan as much ahead to avoid encountering Murphy.
And I just want to jump in and say real quick that having a realtor here like Joel, who understands what the military lifestyle is, who understands what it means to close on a home remotely or sell a home remotely with you in another country, in another state, makes all the difference when going through the home selling, home buying process, whichever end you may be on. I've heard from various friends that had realtors that had, well, I don't understand. Like, why can't your husband just come home from Kuwait and handle taking care of this? It's not always an easy where you can jump on a plane or quickly get something notarized and faxed back over sort of deal. So having a realtor and having that real estate team that understands our military community and our needs and our unique situations goes a long way in making that process so much smoother for you.
Absolutely.
So we have a lot of families this year that are going to be selling their home for the very first time. It might have been the first home that they bought on their last PCS. Now they're turning around and selling it. What are some things that families need to know about when they go to sell a home?
Well, I think because most people, most of the general public, and even military members sell homes more frequently than the normal American. But still, every 3 years is really not enough to be an expert at it. If you pick a professional that's selling 50 homes a year, this is what they do day in and day out. And they'll really be poised with the local regulations. They'll have teams of experts, contractors that can help you if the need arises, and have the ability to advertise your home and get you the most return for your dollar. But I would recommend that you reach out to a professional so you get an idea of the process and the timeline, really setting the expectation so you can plan around that. You get your big blocks in your calendar and then let the small things fill in around there. But you also want to know what costs are customary in your market. Different parts of the country handle real estate sales differently. So the process varies from even city to city to state and regionally in the country. So if you've been in Vegas for 3 years and now it's time to leave, you probably have never sold a home in Las Vegas before. So understanding the process is probably the biggest way to ease it and relieve the stress, and just set the expectation so you're not disappointed or surprised by something at the end. And then the market conditions. If I list a home here today, it's probably going to be sold by Friday. But there are parts of the country where once the snow falls, you're waiting till spring. So being abreast of the conditions in the area that you're trying to sell the home in is very important, because it varies so much from state to state.
No, and that totally makes sense. So, I mean, I would say that this particular market and the way that things have gone is an anomaly. So whether it was winter or summer, this year is just off the chain.
Yeah.
I know several of my friends are agents, and they are just crazy. Their schedule is nuts. But with the housing market so hot, we've seen a lot of sell by owners out there.
Yeah.
Why should a family use an agent for selling versus navigating that selling process on their own?
Well, first of all, if you list with an agent, NAR, National Association of Realtors, has done studies that a home listed by an agent will sell for higher on average than a home that's listed for sale by owner. So first of all, the amount of money you put in your pocket is the number one reason. And that's even after you pay commissions to an agent. Second of all, if you list your home by yourself, you're not going to be able to market it as nearly as effectively as a realtor would be able to. So marketing and exposure is the driving factor to getting the most money for your home. And if you list your home for sale by yourself, odds are that the buyer is going to be represented by an agent, and you're going to be negotiating against somebody who does this for a listing or a living. And it would be like defending yourself in a court of law when the other person has an attorney. And I think you place yourself in an extreme disadvantage when, if I'm closing 55, 60 deals a year and you sell your own home once every 7 years, I'm pretty sure I have an advantage, and I would bet on me. And your seller, as the seller, will probably be paying me as the buyer's agent to negotiate against you. So I would say it'd be well worth it to hire your own representation in every case. You can certainly sell your home especially in this market. You can throw a sign in the yard and get your home sold, but are you going to pick the right offer? Do you know what to look for? Do you know how to limit your liability? Do you know what state law requires of you? And a licensee will know those things and be able to guide you and protect you and help you pick the right offer. The highest offer is not always the best offer, and in many cases is the worst offer. Because if they can't put enough cash up to bridge that gap and say, hey, I'm willing to pay this and I'm able to pay this, and they're gambling on the appraisal coming in low so they get a chance to renegotiate, you may find yourself in 2 weeks wishing you went with a stronger offer that was a little lower.
Yeah. Those costs can definitely add up. So speaking of costs, like what are some of those unexpected expenses that folks should know about when selling their home? Things that we don't think of going into the process, but then our realtor says, oh, you got to pay for this and pay for that and pay for this in the deal.
Yeah, and I think a good agent will lead with that, because I think setting the expectation is how you avoid miscommunication and surprises, and also reinforce those along the way. Like, when I list your home, I'll tell you things, but you won't hear that. You'll just hear what we're going to list your house at and what you expect to walk away with. And then as we go into escrow and accept an offer and open escrow, and the bills start coming due, then you'll be like, hey, you didn't tell me about this. But the seller here will pay, if it's in a common interest community, they'll have to pay for the association related expenses. And that's under state law. And I think in many states we'll have similar things. So the, transfer of the association documents for the buyer approval. Seller pays commissions and the buyer's agent don't, especially on VA, a buyer can't pay commissions. You've got transfer tax in many jurisdictions that goes right to the county when a property transfers. Seller customarily pays that. And then owner's title insurance, which they provide to the buyer, which guarantees that the property has clear title. It can be between 7 and 10% of the sales price in seller-related closing costs. And granted, we're in a much more competitive market where agents are trimming those costs to remain competitive, but it's a substantial cost to sell your home. But in my experience, using an agent will help you maximize your sales price to reduce the impact of that cost on your net.
That's, it's funny that you mentioned some of that. It's, I'm going to tell you right now, myself and our girl Megan over here, neither one of us are currently homeowners. My husband and I, until we moved here, always lived on base all the time, all the time. Like that was a thing. So imagine paying your first electric bill at 35 years old, right? Hi, how you doing? And so, but we wanted, that last move was very important for us to at least dip our toes in on the renting side so that our kids could get used to, not living on a base that's guarded with dudes with guns, right? So they can when we first got here, Mom, we need to get a guard dog. Mom, we should buy a taser. How about we just lock the door, guys? How about we go ahead and do that? But somebody had a really interesting question, and maybe you can help us out. Mary Finney, shout out, Mary. Do you recommend rent versus buy for short 2-year terms? What would tours?
Well, I almost invariably recommend purchasing just because that really is a path to building generational wealth that is available to Americans. And I have clients that buy in every duty station and own half a dozen homes. And when they retire and somebody's been renting these properties from them and paying off the mortgage, they're going to have a substantial real estate portfolio. And if you were renting, all you're doing is paying my client who owns 7 homes to build his future generational wealth. A lot of it would depend on market conditions. We're in a very hot market. I think that people are overpaying for homes above what you would consider value, the market value in our current market. So you're looking at, hey, do I buy? And if you do buy now, it's incumbent upon the market to continue on its trajectory for you to be in a position to sell in 2 years. But I think a lot of it will depend on your overall goals. And are you just looking to not rent in your duty stations, or are you looking at it as a way to build future wealth?
A question to add in there, can we also discuss how maybe location might play a piece into that, whether you should buy versus rent? Because right now for us, we live in Podunk, Texas, where there isn't a high military turnover. There isn't a lot of folks.
Oh, you froze.
Oh, you froze, Megan. Man, Murphy is just all over us today. What's happening, people? Back off Murphy. Everybody use that hashtag, back off Murphy. Let's see. Okay, she's probably going to log out and log back in here in just a second. But
I think I know where she was going. It's about the turnover rate of a particular market. And Las Vegas, I think we've got with the military, and I would think that many of the more dense military destinations would have a high turnover. We've got a high influx of people coming in, high influx of people going out, and that keeps our market very volatile, a very high turnover rate for both sales and purchases. So I can imagine that there are markets where it's more seasonal, or they have less inbound and outbound traffic, where you're not going to see the appreciation that we would perhaps see here. 20% in a year is almost unheard of if you look at the last decade. And, low inventory and high buyer demand causes that. If you don't have the buyer demand, then you're not going to see that appreciation occur. So yeah, there are markets where I think if you just follow the investors and look where they're buying, you can they're doing the research. They're determining what markets are good and what are bad. So, that competition is going to drive up pricing typically in a real estate market.
Gotcha. And we did just say, hold on. Megan is trying to come back, people. She's trying. It's not Monday. It's really Wednesday. Murphy, back off. Everybody use that hashtag and all the posts. That'll ward him off. Okay, so I'm going to actually, while we're waiting on her, I'll ask Jared's question. Jared had a question about HOAs. What about buying in an HOA versus a non-HOA? Is there one better than the other?
Well, I came from the Midwest, so I didn't even know what an HOA was. And when I moved to Las Vegas, almost everything, especially everything built in the last 10 years, is in an HOA. And my initial response was, screw that. I don't want anybody telling me how to use my property. But I've come to appreciate them for what they do. And I think they do a really good job of supporting property values. It gives you an anonymous avenue to file complaints against neighbors to bring them into compliance. And your neighbor can't paint their house purple in a lot of cases. They can't have knee-high weeds. They can't have disabled vehicles. They can't park their camper in front of their house. So yes, it's rules governing how you can use the property, but they apply equally to everybody. And I think I've come to appreciate that. I think it can still be a pain to deal with, but I think they do support property values, and that is really their redeeming quality, in my opinion.
That makes sense. And thank you, Jared. Shout out for that question. Jared is one of our newest spouse sponsors here at PCS Grades. Megan, welcome back. We're going to try and ward off Murphy for you, but Joel did answer your question. He knew where you were going and he went to town on it. He saw it a mile away.
So my kids are all home. So school is out now for us. My kids are all home. So they're all in the bedroom right now on their tablets, sucking up our Wi-Fi. So once I got kicked off, I had to yell at them to turn off their Wi-Fi and play other games for now.
That is definitely going to be a thing. I didn't even think about that. Good call.
Yeah.
All right. So back to the questions at hand. So now with the housing market as hot as it is, like we went over, if a home sells quickly, which we all know it kind of does, how long are closings taking, and what options do families have when it comes to either needing to find a short-term rental or doing a rent back?
Sure. And I think we see some of sellers adjusting their plans to take advantage of the market and being willing to rent. But also, because the market's so hot and inventory is so low, we're seeing buyers willing to let sellers stay in the house after closing in our market. So to make their offers more attractive, they'll say, hey, we can close in 20 days, but we'll let you stay for 60 days. And that kind of concession, I think, holds value for the seller. And it also can be creative and not drive the price up because you're offering something of value, but an appraiser is not going to give that as a deduct in a lot of cases. So that and cost shifting, where it's customary in our market for a seller to pay for a home warranty. Well, buyers are paying for their own home warranties. It's customary for a seller to pay for the transfer tax. Well, if I don't want to drive the price up, but still want to show the seller value, I can offer to pay that on their behalf, and that's not going to affect the appraised value of the home, but it's going to put more money in the seller's pocket. So we're seeing these creative things to keep the conditions like appraisals in mind, but offering things of value to the sellers that are atypical and just a function of the market that buyers need to be wary of, that there are things they can do outside of just running up the price to make their offers more attractive to a seller. And if you're not moving for 90 days, but you identify a house, you get in a contract, you probably, VA you have to occupy within 60 days of closing, but you could close on the home and negotiate a rent back or lease back or let the seller overstay and help them out and, make your offer seem much better.
That's an interesting strategy. I haven't bought a home yet. Trying to think about it. Kind of hard in this market. Yeah, I picked the right time, right? Okay. Should have done it like years ago already, but
Even 6 months ago.
yeah, right.
It was different.
Very, very much so.
So talking about, selling our homes and the cost that homes are right now and, them going for over, their general value, what kind of value are we seeing in regards to folks and what their asking price is and what they're being offered on homes? And are there any additional perks right now with it being a seller's market that folks should know about?
Yeah, well, price is a huge thing,
Mhm.
and we're able to put a lot more money in our sellers' pockets just due to the market conditions. We've got last I heard 2,000 people a week moving to our market from California, and with that, everything in our market it shows value in their eyes because their market is even more inflated than ours. So, but that's very disruptive on the people that live in our market. But if I'm working for a seller and they're willing to pay $50,000 more than Joe Kettle who lives down the street that wants to move into the house, they're going to win in almost every case, and it's really hyper competitive. It will change and it will change back, but we've had relatively low inventory the entire time I've been doing this in Vegas, and maybe 30 or 60 days of the entire time I've been doing this, I would consider it a balanced market. It's been a seller's market for almost the entire time. And we're seeing new home builders are not releasing lots. They're developing interest lists and then doing highest and best spec homes. And to me, it's just a function of the market, but it can be very difficult to buy in that market. But I'm advising my clients that are homeowners, if they're going to need to move in the next year, to look at doing it now simply because the market conditions are so good. And competition is really the biggest driver of appreciation. And in order to maximize that, it's a perfect storm right now for sellers. They're driving the car and the buyers are sitting in a dog kennel up on top.
So one of the points that you made in there, is there any perks right now, or is it a good idea for those folks, like seeing that it's a seller's market right now, seeing we can get so much over our asking price or appraised value because people need a home, selling our home now, going to rent for a year or two, and then coming back when it's hopefully a buyer's market and buying then?
And that is a conversation. It's hard to predict when the market will change, and I think if we could, there probably wouldn't be any changes like that. So,
Yeah.
but for me, it's about locking in gains. I'm a fiscally conservative person, and if you have $250,000 on the table and you can take that off and secure that, to me, it would make sense to lock in those gains and then rent for the interim until you can buy again. I mean, there is value in the market, and it's just not readily apparent, and you see it daily. But if you look at properties that come back on the market after being in escrow, you could probably get a better deal on that than going after a new listing. So I think if you gave yourself the flexibility by having cash in the bank and a lease that you can stay in temporarily, that you're not under pressure to buy. So lock in those gains and then keep an eye on the market and look at properties that the new listings are the most competitive stuff that comes back on the market. Well, now if the seller's already packed up or moved out, they're in a much different mindset than they are when their home is beautifully staged and just came on the market and has 20 showings a day. So that is probably the one case where a buyer can take advantage of the situation in the current market, is to look at those homes that are coming back on the market or been on the market 30 days. I mean, certainly there are overpriced homes even in this market that still won't sell, and that's just a disconnect between the seller and the market and them waiting for the market to catch up. But if you relieve the pressure from yourself, it gives you the ability to make a decision that makes a lot more sense.
So another question to a comment that you just made: selling a home when it's perfectly staged versus selling a home when it's completely empty. What are the perks and benefits to one way or the other, and what should people be trying to plan for in that regards?
Certainly. Well, I think staging of a home definitely helps, and an empty home, a buyer is going to think they need to sell. They don't want this home sitting empty. They're carrying all these costs, and I think a perfectly staged home, it also is much more visually appealing, and they can picture themselves living in it. Whereas if it's just four walls and a tile floor, you've got to be more creative. And some people have that ability. I unfortunately don't, to visualize interior spaces with furniture. But so to me, the staging helps that. And then I don't have to do the thinking. And I can just imagine myself sitting on the couch rather than wondering what kind of couch I would put and where I would put it. So, and it also removes the doubt in the buyer's mind that you're desperate to sell because you're carrying the cost for this empty home.
No, yeah, and so speaking of cost, because this is kind of a running theme, and we may have kind of touched on it a little bit. Mary had a question. Mary, you're on fire, girl. Shout out. How do you make VA loans competitive to conventional loans? Because with conventional loans, we all know that you can waive stuff. There are things that can be waived, contingencies can be waived, and we can't. We have requirements through the VA home loans.
Yeah, and the minimum property requirements, your agent should be showing you homes that meet those requirements. And when I'm working with a VA buyer, any kind of buyer, they're looking at the house, they're looking at the space, I'm looking at the condition, I'm looking at future problems. If we decide to move forward on this property, hey, it doesn't have a stove, the seller's going to have to put a stove in. The paint is peeling, the seller's going to have to paint this. So I'll write that into my offer. I'm not going to wait 3 weeks for the appraiser to tell them that. I'm going to write it in my offer as a condition of acceptance. So the seller knows up front that, hey, your property doesn't meet the minimum property requirements and you're going to need to fix that. It is much more difficult to compete with the VA offer. I think a lot of it comes down to education and educating the agent on the other side so they can relay that to their homeowner. I think I'm very comfortable presenting a VA offer if there's a veteran selling the home. And that can be determined in our MLS. I can see the type of financing that was used previously on a house, and I write introduction letters and I tell them, Mary and Bob are moving here from Quantico. They're going to be here for 3 years. They love your home. They want to be in this neighborhood. The schools are great, and it's about selling the sizzle and not the steak. And just opening up the dialogue. And the VA buyer can pay above appraisal. They can pay their own closing costs. They can't pay commissions. But it's very rare that even comes up on the buying side. The seller's paying the commissions anyway. They can't bring you up to 3% if the seller's only offering 1 or 2. But that's just the way it is. I think a lot of the VA, there's a misperception that VA appraisals are bad. I disagree. I've done hundreds of VA deals on both sides, and I think if the agents do their job, an appraiser needs information. And if you don't provide them with the information, they have nothing to go with. If you tell them, hey, we put $100,000 into updating this home, that carries value. But they can't see, they're not going to go in the attic in every case. Well, they don't know you have a 16-SEER HVAC system with the whole house humidifier. They just know you have a house. So a lot of it is information and, prepping that seller and the listing agent to provide that to the appraiser in an effort to get your appraisal to come in.
I mean, yeah, that does. I mean, I guess that does make sense. I'm looking at it. I'm kind of looking at it like when I'm looking at her question, I look at it like, okay, so with that appraisal, it comes in at this much, even though we aren't required to have that zero down, right? That's the catch. It doesn't mean we're not coming out of pocket, which is a huge kind of misnomer.
Yes, absolutely.
But because how homes are selling at so high over, and we're going to have to come out of it's different than having that 20%.
Yeah. Unless you find a distressed property or a seller who absolutely wants to sell to somebody who served in their same branch. In our market specifically, you're going to have to come to the table with money. You're going to have to bridge the gap between appraisal or offer to. I'm not a big fan of blanket waivers, like we just don't care about the appraisal, but we're willing to pay up to $10,000 above the appraised value if it doesn't come in. And, your agent should know what's working in your market to get these offers accepted. So I think working with a professional is the first thing, and they should be able to educate the other side if they're unfamiliar with VA offers. But yes, the expectation that you can do zero down. And another one is that the seller can pay 6% towards your closing costs. Well, you're not getting a home warranty in this market, let alone 3% or 6% towards your closing costs. So I think a lot of it is setting the correct expectation. And if you are in a very hot market and you want to do zero down and have the seller pay all your closing costs, you're probably not going to be moving into a house.
That's not my favorite answer, but it's the truth, and we appreciate that because it's real. You can't prepare for something if you don't know about it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Mary, again, you're on fire. How do you find the right agent?
Personal referrals is really the number one source. Your friend, your trusted friends, your family. I mean, there are online reviews, there are resources, there are programs like PCS Grades that offer a real estate service, and I think those are all good sources. So a personal referral is probably the best way to find an agent.
Sorry, I was on mute again. Story of my life. Okay, and so, oh yes, actually, and it's interesting. So Gina said same thing. My current area follows word of mouth. So many personal recommendations, and at PCS Grades, I mean, we have relationships with agents like Joel here who they have to know about the military community. They have to know about our lives because whether it's buying or selling, this is one of the biggest financial things that we're going to be doing in our whole lives, right? And so we have to have that level of trust. Who do we trust most? We trust each other. I'm going to trust what Megan has to say because Megan's living my life. So she's used Joel before and she recommends Joel. I'm going to trust her if she's utilized him because she faces the same challenges and is looking for similar things that I am. And if she trusts him, I'm going to trust him. Megan here, actually, she says this a lot and it's especially helpful to know. But Megan, why don't you talk about that whole rental thing?
Yeah, so we had orders to Virginia one year. It was a hot market. We knew we weren't going to be there very long. And so for us, we felt like renting was going to be better than buying. But again, finding a rental home was very, very hard because houses that were listed were gone the next day. Just how fast the inventory there moved. So I had reached out in the local spouse group there, asked about realtor recommendations, got in touch with the realtor that was recommended in that group. Contacted her, told her that we were just looking for a rental home, told her what we need. And when we arrived in town, we spent 3 days going around and looking at about 20 different homes. Eventually found the right home that was going to work for us with what we needed in the location that we wanted to be in. And it was just a wonderful experience being able to work with her. We spent about 2 years there at that location. And every time in the spouse group, somebody asked saying, hey, who's got a recommendation for a realtor? We're moving to the area. I dropped her name left and right and talked her up like crazy because she gave us such a wonderful experience. And she was also a military spouse as well. So she, again, understood our lifestyle, understood what it was that we needed. In that 2 year period, there were about 12 folks that utilized her as their realtor as well. 9 of them bought a home from her. And so it's that big word of mouth recommendation, and that for the real estate community, it's not just working with the client you have now, but it's working with the referrals that are going to be coming after them because of the service provided. We know that with the real estate market, the real estate industry, I mean, rental homes is not where you make your money at, but again, it's that service you provide and that word of mouth referrals, it goes a long way. So if you're moving to an area, if they have a local spouse group or a local community group, getting in there and asking, who's worked with a realtor. I mean, good or bad, you're going to hear, stay away from this person or go use this person. They're phenomenal. It will go a long way. Yeah.
It's one of those things where especially, I mean, in general, but especially with the military community, the word of mouth is literally the gold standard of advertising. Like, Kevin Bacon's got nothing on us. It's more like 2 degrees of separation for all of us, guaranteed. And so, I mean, we're like a mini mafia, you know what I mean? We kind of know everybody. And so once you get to a certain point, but that speaks volumes to, again, I trust what you say because of my life. Chances are I know somebody who knows somebody who's utilized your services, and I'm going to hear about it one way or the other. That's what we do at PCS Grades. We do that for housing on and off base. We do that for, we have great schools embedded in our site. We do that for, movers, those people who are moving all our household goods from one place to the next. We offer those things so that we can get that trusted information from the people who live it, right?
Yeah.
So that's super helpful.
So really quick, Mary here, your comment, the toughest thing is finding a correct agent that's familiar with the military life. So one of my friends told me this trick that when you are needing to use a service, real estate, whatever it may be, if you tell them you're a military family and you're PCSing there, and they turn around and say, what does PCS mean? That should be like the red flag of they don't know what our community is. So just those little comments of, when you talk to somebody, trying to see if they're a good fit, if they understand what your life is like, using those military acronyms that somebody familiar with our community would know about. If they ask you what it is, you should know they're not familiar at all then.
So I'm actually getting the wheel of names together. If anybody has any saved rounds for either Joel or for Megan here on any PCS updates that we gave, I'm going to be getting those wheel of names. If you want to be included on that, get those saved rounds in now, and make sure that you're sharing this with people who need it. We all know somebody who's moving this summer. If it's not you, it's somebody. And if they're selling the house, this is something that they need to know.
Definitely. I'm trying to scroll through the comments to see if there's any questions that we missed. And mine are only going back so far because my kids kicked me off the Wi-Fi. No, I'm not seeing anything on my end that we missed. So Joel, any last minute tips, tricks, hacks, things that we didn't discuss today that folks selling their home should know about or be aware of with what the current market is?
Yeah, I think, because it's all real estate is local. So I think really the biggest thing is education and finding yourself a resource in a real estate professional that can guide you through the process in your local market. Because with it being so variable across locations, you really need somebody that is on the ground and in that market to help you navigate the process. And I think thankfully the market is good across the country and really helped us, survive last year. But really hiring a professional and giving yourself plenty of time so you're not under a lot of stress and have to make fear-based decisions. It's knowledge is power, and the more you know, just the better the process is going to go.
You're muted, MJ.
Yes, I am, but that was purposeful that time. That happened on purpose. Okay, all right, here we go. This is for a Hope Design Limited. This too shall PCS necklace. In the event that the winner already has one, we will upgrade you to the next Mill Spouse Love collection. So let me share my screen and let you into my brain for just a moment. All right. Here we go. All right. Here we go. Drum roll, please.
One day we really are going to have a drum sound.
A drum roll. Mm-hmm. Victoria!
Hey, congratulations, Victoria.
Congratulations, Victoria. Okay, make sure that you get with us in the PCS Grades Facebook page so we can get your info and send you over a little Mill Spouse Love. Oh, did we lose Joel?
Oh, we did.
We did. Hopefully he'll get back in. But if not, Joel, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for, oh, there he is. I get to say it in person. There he is. See, Murphy is all over everybody.
He is. He had to get me one last time.
Oh my goodness. Back off, Murphy. Yes, we did the Wheel of Names, and Victoria won our Mill Spouse Love collection. We have a necklace that we send from a military spouse jeweler, and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. And so thank you so much, Joel, for coming on and sharing your expertise, both as prior service and knowing what our life is like, and from the real estate perspective. It is much needed, and we everybody on the replay, if there's anybody that needs to get in touch, anybody has any saved rounds, any other questions, we're going to keep in touch with Joel. He's not going to get rid of us that easy. So we'll go ahead and make sure to pass those questions along if we can answer them ourselves. So thank you again. Next week will be on Thursday instead of Wednesday. Just FYI, my birthday is next Wednesday, and kind of wanted to take that day, to chill a little bit, maybe not go on camera. But we will definitely be back in the game on Thursday, June 3rd. And until next week, Megan.
This too shall PCS.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.